and welcome to another episode in the Character Bio series. Requested by Zorua2660, we're here to discuss the multiple histories of Dr. Ludwig Maxis. So let's start with the original timeline. In February of 1931, Dr. Ludwig Maxis was sent out to check a meteorite that crashed near Breslau, Germany. Within this meteorite was a mystical, never-discovered element with incredible power. Dr. Maxis dubbed this element Element 115. With this discovery, Dr. Ludwig Maxis founded a research organization named Group 935. The group's purpose and motto was to improve the human condition, inviting scientists from across the world to advance various fields of technology using this newly discovered power source. 3 years later, on November 5, 1934, Dr. Maxis' wife, who is unnamed, gave birth to Samantha. Tragically, his wife passed soon after giving birth, leaving him to raise Samantha on his own while also leading and working on Group 935. His focus mainly remained with 935, which led Samantha to feel neglected. He'd send an invitation to a friend to come work for Group 935. This friend being Dr. Edward Richthofen. Working on behalf of the Illuminati, Dr. Richthofen accepted the invitation. We jump to 1939, as Dr. Maxis and Dr. Richthofen proceed with their matter transference device experiments. The MTD is a teleporter designed to, teleport people or objects from one place to the other. But it appears the two are having troubles, as every subject they've sent through the teleporter either returned as a puddle of blood and guts, or zombified. These zombified subjects caught the attention of the Reichstag, who would propose a deal to Dr. Maxis. The Reichstag is to fund Group 935's endeavors, supply them with more volumes of Element 115, and provide them with more facilities. But they are to divert their focus off of their original goals and to ones that would benefit the Führer's dream of a 1,000-year Reich, such as a wonder weapons program and a super soldier program respectively. He agreed to their terms, leading Group 935 down a doomed path Maxis couldn't have predicted. Being too busy for his daughter, Maxis gets Samantha a pet puppy, whom she names Fluffy, who will provide the company Maxis is unable to. Meanwhile, Dr. Richthofen and fellow 935 scientist, Dr. Schuster, were performing another MTD experiment, this time with a walnut instead of a living subject. When teleported, the walnut remained intact, unaffected by the element. Richthofen reported this discovery to Dr. Maxis, who only scolded him and Schuster for getting off track from their real work. When Richthofen talked back against Maxis, he decided he'd let Richthofen in on an administrative secret.
We need funding. We need equipment. They need new weapons. Chances are this war will end soon with a treaty or two, and we will be in a much better position to help the world. We can provide the Nazis technical expertise in various areas without putting all our eggs in your walnut basket. Good day, Edward.
This argument put a wedge in Maxis and Richthofen's friendship. After this event, Richthofen would become very busy, creating the Wunderwaffe DG2, which terrified Maxis due to its immense power. But nonetheless, he promised to mass-produce the rifle. Sometime after, in Richthofen's absence, Dr. Maxis would steal the designs of the ray gun from the Rising Sun facility, finishing it himself, with the help of Dr. Porter for its Pack-a-Punch variant. However, Group 935 was beginning to run low on Element 115 and facilities to work in. He'd have his secretary Sophia write a letter to the Reichstag requesting more of both, or else 935 cannot fulfill their promise to the fatherland. They approved of his request, allocating more funds and providing more facilities, such as the Asylum Facility, Kino Facility, Siberian Facility, a castle in the Austrian Alps, and the Rising Sun Facility, with Division 9's Takeo Masaki to overwatch their work. With all of these new facilities to work with, Dr. Maxis and Sophia are transferred to the Kino Facility, while Richthofen is sent out to the Siberian one. At the Kino Facility, Dr. Maxis was to carry out experiments upon their undead subjects with the goal to try and control them. They made little progress, except when it came to Subject 2-6. The control over the subject wasn't drastic or complete, but it was listening to commands. The subject would maintain control for 26 hours, thus giving it its name. Unfortunately, a fire alarm startled Subject 2-6, causing it to lash out at the nearby staff. The subject was put down as a result, setting Maxis and Group 935 back, causing Maxis to believe that controlling the undead is simply impossible, at least by means that they're going by. During Subject 2-6's meltdown, Maxis' secretary Sophia became infected. He'd have her come see him sometime after. She tried to hide her infection, but Maxis was well aware. He poisoned her drink, killing her for her own good, he says. In the Agonia fracture, after her death, Dr. Maxis put her consciousness inside of a robot named Sophia, which you can learn more about in her own video. Now back to Maxis. Months pass by and the Axis powers have lost the war. Group 935 loses its source of funding and their future is looking bleak. But despite the setback, Maxis and 935 push on. After hearing of Richthofen's twisted experiments that he's been conducting over at the Siberian facility, Dr. Maxis cancels production of the Wunderwaffe DG2 and has Richthofen return to the Der Riese facility where the two of them continue their MTD experiments. Just as before, their subjects return necrotized. Frustrated at the lack of progress being made, Maxis decides to take a step back from trying on human subjects, and instead, an animal. With none in their immediate possession to use, except for Samantha's dog, Fluffy. Having Richthofen tie Fluffy up inside of the MTD's chamber, proceeding with their experiment, the result was no different. Fluffy returned, now transformed into a hellhound, with bones protruding across its spine and melting flesh from the hellish flames that danced across its body. Samantha had snuck into the room, witnessing the transformation of her once innocent pup. Despite being terrified about what had happened to her dog, she ran towards it anyway, and Maxis was quick to follow. The two were within the chamber, Maxis trying to protect Samantha from what her dog has become. As he began to lure Samantha out of the chamber, the doors closed on them, banging on the door, asking for Richthofen to let them out, while Samantha started to cry in fear. He tried to reassure her of her safety, while demanding Richthofen to open the door. But his reply...
"Goodbye, Dr. Maxis."
Maxis was teleported away in what Richthofen hoped would be his demise, but in Maxis's luck, he was sent to a place known as the Crazy Place. In this dimension, he'd managed to learn how to merge himself within technology, but he wasn't there for long. He was plucked from the Crazy Place and arrived in a facility located on the moon, known as Griffin Station. This facility was led by Richthofen, constructed entirely behind Maxis's back. Upon his arrival, he was confronted by Dr. Groff and Dr. Schuster, Group 935 scientists who betrayed their cause. The doctors asked him to reason with his daughter, who wound up at Griffin Station after Richthofen teleported them all away. His daughter was located within a device known as the MPD. He apologized to her for neglecting her for everything he's done, asking her to leave the MPD. Upon coming out of the device, she was left in tears. Maxis asks her of one more thing.
Kill them.
Pushing her back into the MPD, then grabbing the handgun off of one of the doctors and killing himself. His death caused Samantha's rage to reach incomprehensible levels. She wreaked havoc across Griffin Station and all Group 935 facilities in her pursuit of Richthofen. But what she didn't know was, her father was still alive. He merged his soul within Griffin Station's technology, laying dormant until the time was right. We'll skip forward to Ultimus's arrival at Griffin Station. After securing the golden rod and focusing stone, Richthofen approaches a computer device that he was attempting to use to merge the devices. It's here when Maxis reappears, making himself known. He tries to reason with Richthofen to save Samantha, but Richthofen is too far gone to care, and deletes Maxis, or, once again, so he would think. After Richthofen swaps souls with Samantha, gaining control over the ether and the undead, Maxis again returns, speaking to Dempsey, Nikolai, Takio, and Samantha, who is now inhabiting Richthofen's body. He asks them to launch a set of missiles to the Earth, to sever Richthofen's connection with the ether. The Earth was overrun with the undead, all under control of an absolute madman. The survivors of the planet were split into two groups, followers of Richthofen and followers of Maxis. Through the next 10 years, this war would rage on. Their goals? To activate 3 pylons in either of their favors to fulfill their own purposes. Richthofen's was to regain complete control over the ether, while Maxis simply wanted to reunite with his daughter. No progress was made until 4 survivors, Samuel J. Stuhlinger, Marlton Johnston, Abigail Misty Briarton, and Russman, united as one, becoming Victus. In Hanford, Maxis and Richthofen reach out to Victus, asking them to activate the local polarization device in their favors. Victus ignored Richthofen's pleas across their adventures in Transit, Die Rise, and Buried, constructing the 3 pylons for Dr. Maxis. And upon completion, Maxis took over as Supreme Commander of the Dead, replacing Richthofen's role and now having control over the ether. He damned Richthofen's soul into a zombie where he is to be killed again and again. He apologizes to Victus for manipulating them and informs them of his intentions to destroy this universe so that he can be reunited with his daughter Samantha, who he is plucked from Richthofen's body on the moon. However, Victus and the zombified Richthofen do escape this reality before its destruction. That was the canon ending of the original timeline's Maxis, but there is an alternate non-canon ending as well, where Victus constructs the pylons in Richthofen's favor. In this ending, Richthofen regains complete control over the ether, being able to send himself inside of a physical body and maintain control of the dead. but before doing so, he wipes Maxis from existence, finally freeing himself of his rival, though as I mentioned before, this isn't canon. Back onto canon stuff. Samantha witnesses the monster her father has become and reaches out through a rift in time, in alternate dimensions Maxis. In this reality, known as Dimension 63, Dr. Ludwig Maxis was a professor at Heidelberg University. A student under his tutelage named Edward Richthofen viewed Maxis as a father figure. Aware of Richthofen's view of him, Maxis hoped he could fulfill that role for him. The two of them joined an organization known as Group 935 in 1912, and in 1915, Dr. Maxis created the Mauser C96 handgun that we use in Origins. Group 935 came into possession of a journal from a warrior that took place in the Great War that occurred hundreds of years ago. The author of this journal was Pablo Marinus, and 935 had Dr. Maxis review it. Bringing them to France, the journal detailed the existence of a mystical, powerful element buried beneath the surface. Maxis leads the excavation, uncovering an ancient tomb. They would find the entrance to the tomb, but no way to gain access to its interior. Some soldiers, hoping to alleviate their frustration, play the song La Source Noire into the gramophone. Strangely, the music caused the entrance to the tomb to open, and a series of stairs spiraling down. Within this tomb lies 4 statues of warriors, referred to as Primus. Alongside the statues was the element they were looking for, Element 115. With this discovery, many new inventions were made around the excavation site, some being inspired by the writings Pablo inscribed in his journal, such as 4 legendary staves that harness the power of the elements. They were unable to find them, so Maxis instructed Richthofen to recreate them. But this discovery came at a cost. The element began to affect the men at the excavation site. Soldiers reported sightings of mysterious figures dressed as though they were from the Great War, and that some of their fellow men had gone missing. Maxis, too, was infected with the element. His obsession with Pablo's journal only increased. It detailed horrific eldritch entities that wreaked havoc until 4 legendary warriors banished them into the dark place. Maxis begins to believe there's a higher power at play. He'd further study the element, unaware of his infection. He would condense the element into a liquid form, which he used as the source of power for a series of energy fields. These energy fields provided power across the trenches. And soon after this, they discovered the mystery box and pack-a-punch machine. It was here when he began to hear the voice of Samantha from the original timeline. She claimed to be his daughter, but he knew this could not be true. He had no daughter in this timeline. But as time passed, and she continued to speak to him in his mind, he became consumed by her influence. Hoping to free her from her imprisonment, Maxis' obsession with her causes Richthofen to grow concerned for his friend, and to despise the Samantha that he's speaking to. However, it wouldn't be him that gets to free her. Not directly. The infection has corrupted Maxis, and Richthofen, hoping to save his friend, dissects Maxis' brain and places it in a drone to preserve it and protect him. An outbreak occurs at the excavation site, and 3 soldiers from across the globe arrive. Tank Dempsey, Nikolai Belinsky, and Takeo Misaki find Dr. Richthofen, and the 4 are forced to unite as one. They reconstruct Dr. Maxis' drone, where he regains consciousness. The 4 send Maxis to Agartha, where he and Samantha are sent to the perfect universe. Upon their arrival, they found a place simply known as the House. It isn't before long when Samantha is taken away from Maxis by a figure known as Dr. Monty. Dr. Monty cleanses Samantha of all the dark ether that she soaked up from her time in the MPD. Upon her cleansing, she is returned to the house, but she's different. But anyways, Dr. Monty explains to Maxis the stakes at hand. The multiverse is in a dire state, and it needs correction. Maxis reaches out to Richthofen, informing him of what he's learned, bringing him to the house. Here, Maxis tells Richthofen that they must find particular versions of himself, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takeo to secure their souls, bringing them to the house. Richthofen sets out on a long journey, collecting the Korborium, the summoning key, and the blood vials, while joining alongside his old comrades from the excavation site as they travel across the multiverse collecting their mortal souls. One of those souls arrive, being Edward's. Monty uses the soul to recreate the boy, which we know as Eddie. And if you're not familiar with him, then perhaps you'll know him later on as the director of Requiem, but that's neither here nor there. During his isolation in the house, taking care of Samantha and Eddie, Maxis begins to question everything about the multiverse, their existence, Element 115, Dr. Monty, leading him down an existential path of dread and curiosity. When Richthofen, Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai arrive to the house, having secured their souls, allowing Maxis and Richthofen to reunite properly. But on that same night, Maxis hears a voice calling to him from the basement. Upon his descent, the voice becomes more clear, echoing from the summoning key that Richthofen just left on the table. He reaches out to it and it magnetizes to his hand, and before he knew it, Maxis was inside of the summoning key, and outside of it was the Shadow Man. Well, Primus sorts out the mess they found themselves in, and Dr. Monty tries to negotiate with the Shadow Man and maintain the stability of Agartha. Maxis just sort of chills out in the summoning key for a bit, until Sophia, the robot version from Gorod Krovi, arrives and helps defeat the Shadow Man. Except for where it didn't. In the Broken Cycle timeline, all proceeds as normal, except when Primus ventures to Alcatraz to collect the blood vials. Something goes differently here, which you can learn about in the Alcatraz video here. He grew worried about them. They were late, off schedule, and in a place he could not reach them. And he was right to be worried, as his Richtofen was in the midst of sacrificing himself to set his friends free, while also being replaced by another Richtofen. When Primus left Alcatraz and ventured to Nuke Town alongside their Ultimus counterparts, Maxis tried to reach out again, growing weary of their tardiness, informing them that even Dr. Monty has begun to grow suspicious of their whereabouts. It was at this time that Maxis learned the truth. Monty's way of protecting the multiverse was nothing but a lie. A lie to preserve his existence, his position in the larger picture. The real way to save the multiverse was to destroy it, along with themselves. Soon after this discovery, Primus and Ultimus acquired the Elemental Shard. Maxis, fully aware that he and the children are in danger now that they know the truth, teleports Samantha and Eddie to the 8 heroes at Camp Edward, while Maxis is devoured by Dr. Monty's true form. Another reality's Maxis comes from a dimension referred to as Empty Earth. In this dimension, humanity never came to be. However, this is all that is known about this Maxis, as he no longer exists. Back to the original timeline, but a fractured version of it, we return to the moment where Maxis and Samantha were locked in the MTD with the transformed Fluffy. As Richtofen bids them farewell and teleports them away, Dr. Monty erases every single Maxis' existence from across the multiverse, except for the Dimension 63 one, as he is assisting Primus in their cause. Before we go, just one last thing on the original timeline's Maxis. According to a quote from Richtofen, it suggested that Dr. Maxis created the 3179 JGB 215 Wonder Weapon, better known as the Shrink Ray, or Baby Gun. I didn't know where to fit it since I don't really know when he would have made it, but anyway, that is every version of Dr. Maxis. I pray to the Forsaken that this all made sense and I didn't leave out anything. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!